So, hi everyone to this Uniform Agri webinar with Marina Stevens. I hope you can hear and see us properly. So, I'm Maria Luisa Cercello from Uniform Agri Italy, and I'm here together with my Spanish colleague Almudena Molinero and
Hello.
with our guest speaker Marina Stevens. So we are very glad to have Marina with us today. She is a PhD vet, dairy vet from Belgium, and she's going to talk about other health today. So I will quickly share a short presentation about how to use the GoToWebinar platform. So give me 1 second. I'm just searching for my presentation. Just a moment. So, okay. I cannot find the right presentation, but no problem. So about the platform, all the attendees are now with the microphone off, but then we will have at the end of Marina presentation a question and answers time, and at that time you can put your question in the question box in case, or if you prefer, you can even raise your hand with the proper button where React is written. In case you have trouble to hear us, please be sure that the audio is on the computer mode. In case you have any problem, please write us in the question box and we will try to help you. So that's all about GoToWebinar settings, more or less. So please, Marina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mailu. I hope I am clearly to hear. If not, please give a sign. And then I will start sharing and we can start on the presentation today. Normally you can see my screen now. If not, please give a sign and we can start. So thank you for your brief introduction already. Today we will discuss about the Uniform Consultant version with a focus on udder health. I would like to make it as interactive as possible. It's a webinar, so it's a bit difficult, but please, if you have questions or remarks, etc., please put them in the chat box so we can discuss. And the aim is to make it an interesting hour for everybody and to make it as useful for all of us. So I will shortly start with a brief introduction of myself because I think not all of you have met me before. So I'm Marina Stevens. I grew up between cattle as my dad was a dairy cattle trader. And then through time, we make a little jump. I'm married with Ruben. Ruben is a hoof trimmer and he is also specialized in roughing floors to make them less slippery. A little less jump through the time. We have together 3 kids. And in the spare time, I like to go out for a run. These are not my legs. I just take a picture from the internet. So that's what I do and who I am in my private life. And in professional life, I can conclude or summarize in I have something with cows and with udders. That's the very brief description. Well, to go a bit more into detail, I have a lot of passion or interest in udder health, and that interest started already in my last year of my study, my veterinary studies I did in Ghent University, where I decided to make a thesis on udder health. I performed this on the dairy farm of my sister and my brother-in-law, and I learned a lot during this year. As I was not graduated, I could say some silly things, and on the other hand, I could also experience a lot of things because it was my sister. And I don't know how it is in your family, but in my family, we're all very straightforward to each other. So my sister really challenged me to transfer my theoretical knowledge into practical advices, and there I learned a lot from. So the seed of the udder health interest was planted in this project or thesis. So after graduating, I started my master thesis at the team of the Ghent University under supervision of Sophie Pupus and Sanne de Vlieger, where we were focusing on improving udder health on dairy farms in Belgium and their relationship with the antimicrobial usage on dairy farms. So subsequently, after finishing my PhD, I started working at Vetucanol. It is a pharmaceutical company also focusing on udder health. In 2023, I made the decision to start with Farm Animal Support. It's an independent veterinary advising company focusing on udder health. So what do I do in my daily job? A large part of the daily job is supporting udder health at herd level and individual cow level to receive and to maintain a stable and a good udder health. So additionally, we are in Belgium a pioneer in supporting on-farm bacteriological culturing, which is a base for strategic treatment of clinical mastitis cases. We perform also field studies and trainings, always focusing on udder health. It's in our DNA to listen to the needs of the field, and try to find a solution for that. And on a short term, we will offering also support in coaching dairy farmers to collaborate better with their employees. And we will do this in collaboration with people managing experts. On the other hand, another grant that will be available in 2025 is the coaching of dairy farms to reduce antimicrobial usage, as we are currently being trained to become an antimicrobial reduction expert. So in the herds we are supporting are mainly located in Belgium. Some farms are also in neighboring countries, but as this is an international settings and there's a lot of variation between dairy farms globally, I want to give some more background information on farms that we support in udder health, and so also I have the most experience in. So the number of cows varies between 80 and 1,000 cows per herd. And most farms that we support have between 200 and 400 cows, dairy cows. Most farms are family owned with some employees, with quite a lot of automation, as it is quite difficult to find employees or even good employees. More than half of the new installations are automatic milking systems. The production varies between 9,000 and 12,000 kilograms of milk per cow per year, and most cows are housed inside. There's a very limited cows that are on pasture. As some countries may also experience, here in Belgium, we have quite a lot of pressure on the environment, also from society on or influence on environment via manure and also by animal welfare. So there are some challenging times that are coming for the next coming years. So for the agenda, I have, of course, prepared some agenda points and agenda for the next coming hour, 45 minutes. But as I really want to have your interest and your interaction, we really want to have your questions also answered. So if you have some things that some expectations about this presentation, about the coming hour, please put them in a chat box. We take 1 minute time and you can receive them. There might be a lot of interaction or feedback. If we are not able to manage all topics that are set in the chat box, we will certainly contact afterwards or discuss afterwards, so that everybody, it was a useful time for everybody to discuss this hour. So please take your time to think about what do you want to know during this 45 minutes on Other Health by data, and type it in the chat box if you want. Unless I see not really the good thing. I don't see popping up anything, so no expectations. So that's an open call for me. If you do have some expectations, please put them in the chat box. Maybe I don't see the whole list, it's possible as well. But then I will stick on my agenda and we will continue. So we start with the Other Health in a nutshell, and then we will continue on how using these data on Other Health in our daily life, and we will take a short time to discuss afterwards. So we start with Other Health in a nutshell. And we start with what is mastitis. Mastitis is the inflammation of the udder tissue, and in most cases, it is caused by an infection. This infection is mostly due to bacteria, and sometimes also yeast can cause mastitis. In most of the cases, the bacteria enter the tissue by the teeth end, and actually there's only one exception on it, and that's Mycoplasma bovis. And this is the only bacteria that can reach the udder through the blood circulation, and therefore also typically causes mastitis on more than one quarter. In response to the infection, the immune response is activated and wants to actually destroy the pathogen by sending immune cells such as neutrophils and macrophages, so we get an increase in cells. And depending on the properties of the bacteria on the one hand, and the success of the immune response on the other hand, the infection can lead to a clinical mastitis or subclinical mastitis. So for the subclinical mastitis, we cannot see the mastitis with our own eyes, although we can measure it, the infection, with the measurement of the somatic cell count. The bulk milk somatic cell count is measured as a milk quality parameter here in Belgium. The official limit is 400,000 cells per ml, although several milk buying companies, they set a lower goal, a lower threshold. For example, Arla, they say 200,000 ml per cells per ml is a limit. For some farmers, the subclinical mastitis feels more uncontrollable because they don't see it, although it is there. But unless you measure it, you don't see it with your eyes. So that might be something that's more uncontrollable, so more difficult to define. If we then take a step to clinical mastitis, in clinical mastitis, we do see with our own eyes the symptoms of the inflammation. And we see a red quarter, it's swollen, it can be very painful, it's also warm. And the differentiation between clinical and subclinical mastitis, why do I mention it as especially, is because it takes a big, it's important to solve the problem, to define the problem of the udder health, and to get a solution for it. So I will come back on this later in the presentation. I'm always, as I mentioned before, I would like to have some interaction. So please feel free to to respond on this question. And I would like to know what the first thing is that pops up in your mind when you think on udder health on dairy farms. Response rate is already higher. Yes, and it goes almost, yeah. Prevention. That's yes. So the first thing that pops up, the majority of the people say prevention of mastitis. On the second place, we see the economic consequences and production losses. And then on the third place, the welfare, animal welfare, and treatment and relation with milk quality goes equal. So the first thing that pops up is prevention. Thank you for...
Marina, if you agree, I will end the poll, okay?
Yes, thank you. So prevention is the first thing that most people think about, and economic losses as well. And I do think that prevention is indeed important. And we see that if I put this question in place also at farmers reunions, most things are not that positive because in a lot of cases, or the association between udder health is mostly with mastitis, and mastitis such as is not positive because mastitis has several negative consequences. In the first place, it leads to a lot of frustration for the farmers as well, sometimes for advisors or consultants or veterinarians. But it's not the most positive thing you can have on dairy farms. And it's not only frustration that is associated, but it's also in the top 3 of the most common reasons for killing a cow. And it's very, as mastitis is very common, this is logic that it will be also in the top 3. This is a study from Joris Verbeke. He has done his PhD as well on the M team. And during this study, they measured the clinical mastitis incidence on 50 dairy herds in Flanders, so in Belgium. And here you see that it's expressed as clinical cases per 10,000 cow days at risk. So if we make the extrapolation or the calculation into percentage of clinical mastitis cases per month, it's a more usable parameter to express it in. We see that it's an average on these 50 farms, they have an average 2.25% of clinical mastitis cases per month. But you see there's a lot of variation in clinical mastitis cases between the farms. We have farms with 0 mastitis cases, and we have here in the top the 20 on 20 translated to percentage per month. It means that they have 6% clinical mastitis cases per month. And this variation is not only in this study the case, but we see it also in practice that there's a lot of variation. And when there's a lot of variation means that there is also room for improvement. So it's a very common disease with a large influence on the killing, and it's also a costly disease. So not only the costs related to treatment are taken into account, some depending on several models. You can say one case of clinical mastitis has a cost of 250 euros, but it goes up to even 500 euro per case of clinical mastitis. So the treatment cost is only a small part, but we also lose, and especially the farmer, lose a lot of time in treating the cows. Next to these costs, also the milk of the cows that suffer of clinical mastitis cannot be sold. So the amount of waste milk can take also substantial proportions. For example, these are all assumptions, but to make it a bit more touchable, if there's a dairy herd with 100 milking cows, and we take an average clinical mastitis incidence of 3% per month, assuming that one treatment takes 5 days, and we have a 5-day withdrawal time, it means that per clinical mastitis case, we have to separate the milk for 10 days. So if we multiply all these variables, 100 cows, 3% per month, and 10 days per case, waste milk, you see that there's, on this example farm, 360 days a year, milk that has been discarded because of treatment of mastitis. In other words, on this farm with 100 cows, there's almost each day one cow that is eating, that is lying, that is milked, that has to be taken care of which the milk has to be discarded. So that's a pretty good, a big influence. This waste milk. It can take really significant amounts. Clinical mastitis, as well as subclinical mastitis, is also causing a drop in milk production. And in severe clinical mastitis cases, this drop is mostly pronounced, and it's on the short term, a quick drop, while in subclinical mastitis cases, the reduction in milk production is mostly more subtle, but on a longer term. So you lose as well milk in cows with a high somatic cell count. Some severe cases of clinical mastitis can lead to death. So on these farms, the mortality rate can be increased by this increase in clinical mastitis. And last but not least, the mastitis can also cause loss of revenues by not receiving milk quality premiums or even penalties if the bulk milk somatic cell count is increased, as mentioned in previous slides, or in case of antimicrobial residues. In Belgium, as well as I think in a lot of other countries, there is a pressure on the use of antimicrobials in farm animals. And the data you see here in the pie, we have described them in our master thesis, and they show that the antimicrobial consumption in adult dairy cattle, it's divided by route of administration and indication, and we see that almost 2/3 of the total antimicrobial usage in adult dairy cattle is used for udder health purposes. And this is comparable with the findings of the papers in other countries, where we see that udder health and antimicrobial use have a narrow relationship. So if we know this, that's a lot of antimicrobials are used in the udder, it's very logical that if we want to reduce or use antimicrobial on a more sustainable way, we have to do it by the udder health. So this means that reduction can be performed by selective dry cow therapy to reduce the amount of antimicrobials intramammary used during the dry cow therapy. and we can reduce the intramammary tubes during lactation by implementing strategic treatment of mastitis. This is what I aim for also in the beginning, in the introduction. Implementation of strategic treatment means that not all cows with clinical mastitis are being treated anymore with antimicrobials, but based on bacteriological culturing, on the identification of the bacteria that has caused the infection, we are deciding if the cow needs antimicrobials, yes or no. And if antimicrobials are necessary, we can provide the right antimicrobials, and also we can optimize the therapy by the route of administration. So that's the principle of strategic treatment of mastitis. I think most people are more or less confident with selective dry cow therapy, where we are not using antimicrobials anymore for each cow doing dry cow therapy, but here we are selecting cows with who are free from infection, so who have no infection at drying off, and they don't receive antimicrobials anymore. Only a teat seal, internal teat sealer, cows with an infection at drying off do receive antimicrobials. So that's the principle of selective dry cow therapy, next to the principle of strategic treatment of clinical mastitis cases. Both two ways, two manners to have a reduction in antimicrobial use. So that was a short introduction, the udder health in a nutshell. Let's have a look. Yeah. Okay. So then we can continue with how do we use these data in our daily support of udder health. So I regularly receive the question of the farmer, could you come over? Because my farm is struggling with udder health issues. As our approach is to help farmers solving their problems and their pains, it is very important to ask the farmer what he or she thinks what the problem is and what the goal is that they would like to work to. So that's the perception they have. And next to the perception they have of the problem, it's important to also look at what is the current problem. So the next step then is to start to trying to identify the problem based on data. The more data we have, the better the problem can be identified, and the more effective our plan of approach will be. We want to avoid at all times the trial and error situation, and we want really to make a plan of action that is based on decisions driven by data and that is supported by data. So coming back on the difference between subclinical and clinical mastitis, if we make the identification between is the udder health problem related to clinical mastitis cases or to subclinical mastitis cases. So if the bulk milk somatic cell count, is it too high, or is it a combination of both? All these pains, is the bulk milk somatic cell count too high, or the cases of clinical mastitis, the incidence of clinical mastitis cases too high? All this is covered by the farmer by my udder health is poor. So we have to tear them apart in the approach to identify the problem. So for the identification of clinical mastitis problems, the first question should be, are clinical mastitis cases registered in the system? Yes or no? If there's no registration, you cannot analyze things. It's more tricky when it's a sometimes tricky or not. If there sometimes is the answer, I would advise you to not make analysis or be very careful with the interpretation of the analysis. Second question should then be, are all cases registered or not? As I mentioned before. If the registration is poor, automatically the analysis will be also poor. So that's maybe a loss of time for you as well for the farmer. A little sidestep in case of the strategic treatment. So not all cows with clinical mastitis cases are treated with antimicrobials. The next question is, in these cases, if the farmers register all clinical mastitis cases, so all cows with visible signs, or if they just registered the treated cases with antimicrobials. So that's a little sidestep you have to think about when farmers are implementing strategic treatment, because it biases a bit the data that are entered and as well your interpretation. As only if only the treated cases are registered, you might have a false low interpretation of the clinical incidence rate. So the most important message here is, especially for clinical mastitis cases that has to be entered externally, be sure of the quality of the input, checking that quality first before start investing time to analyze them. The data of the subclinical mastitis cases, they are more easy to enter, so we have a higher confidence rate. Coming back on this one, here are the data of the subclinical mastitis cases. So this is a print screen of official measurements of a farm here in Belgium, with the somatic cell count here, this column. You can, I don't think that it's for interpretation, good or poor bulk milk somatic cell count. I do think that we all agree that there's a lot of room for interpretation on this print screen on this farm. So the official bulk milk somatic cell count data are always available. So based on this one, we can say there is room for improvement, yes or no. But if we want to identify further the problem, the somatic cell count problem, we need more data. So if we have somatic cell count, routine somatic cell count measurements, or DHI records, if they are available, we can dig into those information to further identify the problems. These data, if it's routine somatic cell count or DHI records, we can use them with a high confidence rate, and they are very reliable because they are always the same way. The input is always on the same manner. If there are some differences between here the official measurements of the bulk milk somatic cell counts and the average somatic cell count by DHI or by somatic cell count measurements, that it can be an indicator that or some cows are not milked in the tank. If this official measurement is lower than the average somatic cell count by DHI, we can expect that not all cows are milked in the tank, and some cows are kept out of the tank to artificially reduce the somatic cell count. It can also be the other way around, so that the average somatic cell count by DHI or somatic cell count is lower than the official measurements, and then you need to check the inputs by somatic cell count by DHA, because it might be the case that some cows do not have a measurement by DHI records. So that's something already you can use to identify, is it clinical or is it a problem mostly by subclinical mastitis. The next step that then can be identified, is between heifers, or is it more a problem in multiparous cows? And I like to use this pie to get an idea if it's for first lactation cows, so heifers or multiparous, because you have differentiation of the somatic cell count and you can divide it per lactation number. So on this farm here, you can select heifers, so it's Vasen. And on this farm, we see that only 50% of the heifers do have a somatic cell count under 100,000 cells per ml. That's too low. It's way too low. In general, we on herd level, so overall the different lactation numbers, we would like to see it above 60% at least. So for first lactation cows or heifers, we see it. We would like to see it above 75% of animals with a somatic cell count below 100,000 cells per ml. This graph, we selected all the non-heifers, so all the other lactation numbers, and you see that also here it's not high enough. We see a reduction in percentage of cows with a somatic cell count under 100,000 mLs, 100,000 cells per ml, with an increasing lactation number. But even in general, it should be close to 60% or even above 60%. So that's too low on this farm, and that gives us already an idea: is it in heifers, or is it combination, or is it in older cows? The problem. The next step is then to look at, is it the infection? Are cows getting infected during lactation or mostly during drying off? And therefore, I like to use the data of the dry cow analysis, also available in the consultant version, where I evaluate the percentage new infections, and that's calculated by the sum of the animals that have a new infection. So this column of animals, these are infections that these are all cows that entered the dry cow period with, so it's the red. I don't know if if it's visible, but in the most right column, so the red colored column, are cows that have entered the dry cow period with a low somatic cell count and come out the dry cow period with a high somatic cell count. So that's an indication that they got infected during dry cow therapy or shortly afterwards. And we take the sum of these red animals and we compare it to the number of animals that entered the dry cow period without an infection, so the white animals, and they also got through the dry cow period without an infection. So the proportion of animals with a new infection during dry cow therapy should be lower than 10%. In practice, I have, but it's more or less my personal experience, that there might be a gray zone up till 15% of new infections, but once you get above or around the 15%, there is action needed. So the infection pressure is too high during dry cow period, or during drying off, during dry cow period, or shortly after calving. We also evaluate the cure rates in this analysis. And in cure rates, we take the proportion of animals that are cured, so these are the green bars, compared to the animals that have not been cured, so animals that are entered the trying off and period with a high somatic cell count and did not cure, so they also got out of the TRICO period with a high somatic cell count. And cure rates should be above 75%. On bigger herds, and you can evaluate this over a period of 3 or 4 months, but it's important that you take enough animals into calculation to have a good overview and to make it also reliable, your analysis. Next step then is to make the difference between environmental pathogens and contagious pathogens, and that's how we can identify if cows are getting affected by the environment, hygiene, or if it's more during milking for the contagious pathogens. So for the farms that we support, they're all performing the bacteriological on-farm culturing of clinical mastitis cases. So we're a bit privileged that we know already the most infections, or we know already if most infections are coming from the environment or passed through the milking equipment, via the milking equipment for the contagious pathogens. Most important contagious pathogens are Staph aureus, Strep egalactiae, and Mycoplasma bovis. Also here, so we know the mastitis pathogens, and if the entrance of the data is good, so everything can be entered in the system, also the bacteria that are causing the infections, and it's also an overview I like to use. This is a print screen of the clinical of the mastitis analysis in Uniform. We get the different bacteria that are causing mastitis, and we get each month or each GSI record the number of clinical mastitis cases that have been caused by this pathogen. And last but not least, it's also very important to in the identification of the problem is to distinguish if there's a high infection rate and distinguish them from poor cure rates. The graph I use for this to evaluate this situation is this graph that I also like to use. The reds, so each bar is a DHI record. I like to look at the red bars, or the red parts of the bars. These are the percentage of new infections, and now we see the purple parts. This is the percentage of cows with a chronic infection. And here we can see make the evaluation through time. And not only through time, but I think it's a quite new thing. At least it's not available, not yet so long, but it's a very nice that we can also distinguish first lactation cows from multiparous cows, and even distinguish it by lactation number. So we have a clear view on what's the infection dynamics in the lactation number. And also here it's very important as an advisor or a consultant to know if the new infection rate is a problem. Because, for example, a practical example is that we sometimes do have some situations where farmers initially don't want to change their management. They're limited because of factors they fill in, but they do want to lower their bulk milk somatic cell count. So we can lower bulk milk somatic cell counts by taking action in the cows with a high somatic cell count. But if the infection pressure is too high, so if the number of new infections is too high, it feels uncontrollable. It feels also very chaotic, because each month we select cows to treat, and each month there are new cows popping up with infection that have to be treated. So this feels on a long term, this can be perceived as by the farmer, we are not making any progress, because we're treating, and still, stays on the bulk milk somatic cell count doesn't go, doesn't get reduced, despite all the effort we put in. So if I can give you an advice on this one, communicate that if we don't do something on the prevention, which is also very important perceived by you all because you gave it as a feedback to me, but if we don't do something in prevention of the new infections, it will be very difficult to get a stable situation on long term. So if we have identified the problem, then the next step is to check it with reality. So all these steps, the previous steps, are data analysis. And this gives us most of the times a good idea of the identification of the problem where a cow is getting infected. But then the next step is very important to check it with reality. So visit the farm, ask the farmer questions, and confirm the data with what you see and the information you receive from the farmer. Of course, this is for us as advisors a great opportunity to check it with your eyes if your results, your preliminary results based on data, are correct, or if they have to be adapted. After these steps, after we checked it with reality, the next step is to implement the best solution. So after identifying the pain points, we sit together with the farmer and discuss the pains. We discuss what the goal is of the farmer and how we can reach them, and setting in the settings the farmer has and in the resources and in all the limitations that are farm specific, how do we can get to this goal? And this approach will lead to improvements, and that we can evaluate by data. We can also show that there is improvement by data, etc. And then we can evaluate, and this circle leads actually to a continuous improvement of udder health. So these are some examples of checking the data in reality. So post-tipping, for example, is post-tipping performed good or poor? Are the tails clipped? How are the hygiene scores of the tail, of the udder, of the legs? Not of the tail, of the udder, of the legs. Are the walking lanes clean? How is ventilation? Are the cows correct positions in the cubicles, so that manure is not dropping in the cubicles, etc. So always check with your eyes the analysis you make based on data. We are here in a Uniform Agri meeting. I put some print screens in it, how I use it on a daily basis. And I like to work with this platform because it's a real-time platform. It's always available also when I'm on the road or at the farm. And at least as important is that they have connections with different data, different stakeholders, also a lot of data import, which makes it very usable. The setup for a new clients for me then, or for it's very easy for farmers to connect me, to give me access. So that's also very easy to work with. And for me, it's nice to work with it because I can rely on the reports and analysis that are available. They are very high quality. And last but not least, and I think that's one of the most important things, if we have questions or remarks or I don't know what, we can always contact the help desk. we have a quick response, and they're also open for to think about issues we bring to them. So they're very solution-minded. And as I mentioned before, for example, in the cases of clinical mastitis, they're open to help farmers to do a proper registration. And a proper registration is very important for a consultant to work with good data. If you can work with high quality data, you can also do high quality analysis. So as a taking home message, I want to conclude that udder health is a very important segment in the dairy industry. Optimization of udder health is very farm specific. Unfortunately, a one size fits all doesn't work for udder health. Data have an important role in the identification and in the evaluation of the problem, and is the base for a sustainable plan of action. And farmers needs to be supported in the registration of data, for example, of the clinical mastitis cases. That's what I wanted to show about the use of data in udder health analysis. Please feel free to ask some questions, and if I know the answer, I will share it. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Marina, for your presentation. It was very nice and clear. Thanks. So we do have some questions from the audience. I'm going to read the first one. It's a question from Christophe. I hope to pronounce it in a proper way. So shouldn't heifers have an somatic cell count less than 70, 80K for more of 90% of the animals? Physiological, there should be no open space in the udder for bacteria to enter, or was it clear? Or
I don't know if I understand the question very good, but I think that the question is, should the somatic cell count threshold been taken lower for heifers or first lactation cows, because normally they're not infected? I think if I can summarize, yes, that's the question. Well, of course, heifers are not only, we're talking here, for example, in the pie that I use, these are first lactation cows or heifers, not only just after calving, so also during their whole lactation. And in theoretically, first lactation cows should be clear from infection when they calve. That's not always the case. There are quite some farms where first lactation cows or heifers are already infected at the moment of calving. And there you need to do an evaluation of the percentage of heifers that do calve with an increased somatic cell count. So that's the first remark. So in theory, yes, but in practice, it can be a problem already there. And second addition is that it's correct that normally they should be free from infection, but during the lactation, they can be infected like any other cow that is walking around there. So yes, normally it should be lower physiologically, but they can be affected as well as other lactation number cows. So I hope it's an answer, and if not, please ask again, and I will do my best.
Thanks a lot, Marina. Christophe, in case you can type, in case it's not clear, or raise your hand, please let us know. Do I go further, Almo? So we have another questions from Christophe. Is my herd matrix able to spit out the infection rate, healing rate with any new milk control results I type in? So I get, yeah.
Yeah. So if is the new infections and cure rates new? Yeah. I just want. Yeah, I'm going to show it in a demo version. So I'm just going to stop my sharing and open, and I can show you that.
Yeah, I guess it's something we can also reply to Christophe as uniform. So basically, you have different colors based on the somatic cell count results. So red, violet, or green for the cured, chronic, or new infection. But it's based on the somatic cell count we receive from the milk control. So yeah, the program is giving you a suggestion.
So oh wait, sorry. The cure rates, you can see each DHI. So here are all the DHI data. Here it's in Dutch, but this means cure rate. So each DHI record, you can see the cure rates. And new infection rates is also available, as I showed you before. So I'm in somatic cell count analysis graph, and then you take analysis per DHI record. I think it's translated something in English. And here you can see that the red bars as new infections. So
yeah, yes, just a small remark, because this is the cloud version for consultants. So what you showed about the cure rate is not there in a standard Hermetrics on farm, but the graphs you just show from the cell count analysis, they are available, and it's what the colors that Marilu explained. So new infections are in red, chronic are in purple, and cure animals are shown in green. So that's available on farm level also.
thank you for the addition.
So next question. Hello, do you have any calculation if somatic cell count decrease from 400 to 300? How much money can the farm save, or how many mastitis cases can they decrease?
Actually, there is a tool, and it's developed by the M team of the UKent. I do not have the URL available, but I will share it to you, and we can maybe send afterwards, or I'll try to set it in a chat box. There is a tool that has been made by the M team to calculate the reduction of milk production and also in amount of money related to the height of the bulk milk somatic cell count. So there's a tool that is available. The somatic cell count and its relation to treatment of mastitis cases, it's not a one-on-one situation, because actually it's two different things. We can have, depending on bacteria type and reaction, so immunology, we can have total separate systems. So farms with a high clinical mastitis cases and a low bulk somatic cell count, and vice versa. So it's not really a relationship between the two. So there I cannot help you. But on the tool, I will try to find it and send it. If it's okay.
Thanks a lot, Marina. Next question is again about costs. What is the average cost per one cow for mastitis treatment and milk losses?
Yeah, it depends. Of course, the two. As I mentioned, there's a lot of variation between calculations that are available. So it varies for one clinical mastitis case. It varies between 250 euros and 450 euros. Oh, okay, or 500 euro. But the costs are mostly due to the milk losses, and the money you save there is mostly related to your milk price. So let's make a calculation. 50 cents per liter here in Belgium, in average. And you have a dairy cow that produces 35 liters per day. So we have 35 liters a day multiplied by 10 days. So you lose 350 liters of milk. Multiplied by 50 cents. So it's by 2. So that's 175 euro you lose by loss in milking money. Treatments, I think we are close to another 100 euros, so that's already 275. And then you have to calculate, as I mentioned before, the hours or the minutes you lose in treating cows, because your time as a farmer also costs money. Or when you have employees, it's even more important. And actually, you also, a lot of modules take into account, certainly for clinical mastitis cases, that the milk losses you have is not only those 10 days, but also after the curing of the clinical mastitis case, that you see that the initial production isn't received during the lactation. So you lose also money there. So I think it's a very honest calculation that you're at least close to 300 euro and plus, depending on what you take into calculation.
Thanks, Marina. We are going to change a bit the focus on the next question. That is, how do you convince the farmers to collect data?
I think the biggest motive, and at least in my experience, the biggest motivation for farmers to do a proper registration is to use those data in your analysis. If farmers see that they put effort in registration and afterwards nothing is done with this data, they stop doing it. It's human. I would do exactly the same. But if they see that if they start with some kind of registration, and if you see that you use those data, but if I say, yeah, well, we have these outcomes, but you have to take into account that the outcomes are not really reliable because the input was not very good. Next time they will do better. And I think that's the most important drive for farmers to do a good registration. And of course, I think it's our job as well as a consultant or advisor to support them to make it as easy as possible to enter those data. And this is something that I mentioned before, but Uniform also helps us as farmers as well as consultants to enter the data on the correct manner and to do it as easy as possible.
Thanks, Marina. We go on the next question. We do have quite some questions in the question box. Can you make the difference between spontaneous cure rate and cure rate after different treatments of clinical mastitis, and which norms you use?
Yes, we do can. Well, if we can distinguish if the cases, if the treatments are entered correctly, you can distinguish. Here you see in this demo version, you can see clinical mastitis cases, the location, so the quarter, and then you see the treatment that has been given and the curing. So if treatment has entered correctly, we can distinguish the two. We can calculate the cure rate for animals treated with antimicrobials and animals treated by NSAIDs, or not with antimicrobials. So if it's entered correctly, we can distinguish the two. And without antimicrobials is spontaneous cure.
Thanks a lot. So next question. Hi Marina, thank you for the presentation. Can you reduce the risk of mastitis via feed? If yes, are there specific additives that can help to reduce the somatic cell count?
Thank you for the question. There's other health, just in base, it always has to, other health problems are always caused by an imbalance between infection pressure and your own immunity of the cows. And in the package of the immunity, the feed is very important, because if you have feed imbalances, or if certain minerals are too low, we see that the immunity drops. And if immunity drops, you do have problems also in other health. So there is a strong relationship between feed and other health. If feeding is not good, you see problems. You see it reflected in other health. So if to add certain additives, in my experience, if there is a lack of certain, I say minerals or etc., or if the rumen has not enough of activity, you can add, of course, supplements to improve it. And I do think that that can help to improve a better health. But also here, it's a very firm specific approach, and it needs to be evaluated at the herd level.
Thanks, Marina. I go on the next one. In your experience, what is the percentage of high somatic cell count and mastitis increase associated that each of these cause? Milker behavior, milking system, milking liners. What other causes are the most frequent?
Well, the most frequent, I've never received that question before, so it's a good question. I do think they all can have a strong influence, but I do think that milking liners and milking equipment are most easy to check and to, if there's a problem, to adapt. I think that training milkers is maybe even the most difficult optimization. If there is a problem, and I do think there is some room for improvements, especially here in Belgium, where farms are not that big and they have limited employees. But there is room for improvement, I think, for employees, for milkers. But to say put percentage, I cannot put percentages on it. I think it might be a combination of the two. But I do think that if adaptation is necessary, teat liners and milking equipment is more easier than adapting milkers. Maybe we should, I don't know if people have a lot of time, but maybe we should do one or two and then afterwards coming back on the other questions.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to read you the last one also because we are out of the time. So last question for you. Marina, thank you for the clear presentation. Short question. I missed the meaning of DHI.
Sorry, I didn't explain, and it's my fault. I should have done it. MPR in het Nederlands, melkproductieregistratie, milk production registration, dairy herd improvement. So it's counting the somatic cell count each 4, 5, 6 weeks. That's it. But you
Sorry,
mentioned
Marina, we lost you for some seconds.
Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah, we lost you for some seconds.
Okay, I will explain it again. DHI is dairy herd improvement. It is MPR, melkproductieregistratie. It's counting the somatic cell counts each 4, 5, 6 weeks. So it's the routine milk sample investigation or something.